Yo, I'm Mat4yo, and this is Chisel This. Sorry I haven't been around in a while. Mat4yo hasn't let me out of the cage in quite some time. But we are here, and Epic Rap Battles of History is back with a brand new season, which means Chisel This is here for a brand new season. Ayo, Gujin, why not you chisel like Lil Tugboat or something? Okay. Do you want to know why ERB is the only series that gets chiseled here? Epic Rap Battles of History is really the only lyrical art I find consistently consequential. Everything else comes and goes, and I can critique it all I want, but the motives are no different. It's to make money, to be a club banger, or to be a trend, but ERB's purpose is to be a form of art. And my perspective is able to not only influence its continuation, but also impart advice and techniques onto you, the potential artist watching today. But I really don't want the next few months of ERB to consume my entire channel, so every new analysis I will pose a challenge that you will all help me fulfill, and I'll make an original rap out of it. For today, I want you all to leave a comment with a totally random writing prompt. That will be a hypothetical scenario with unrelated elements, such as aliens have begun abducting elephants around the world, and suddenly you find a UFO in your backyard. Or something like, every time you burp, it smells like petunias, and you discover your saliva is an instant fertilizer. I want to hear the craziest ideas you have, and I'll try to justify their existence with rap. Alright, so now to the analysis. Freddy Krueger versus Wolverine is really a match made in heaven. They are blockbuster headliners with claws for hands. One is seen as a hero, one is seen as a villain. Overall, the video was good. Definitely not my favorite. Don't worry, even the worst ERB is better than most of the other content on YouTube. There are most definitely elements of ERB that we take for granted nowadays, like the production quality as a whole, but also the costume design, the backgrounds, Wolverine's teeth and claws, everything from that to Freddy's makeup on his hands. These are all elements for us that we think, sure, no duh, that looks good, it has to be in the rap battle, but for the creators, it's loads of time, money, and energy soaked into this project. So for that, I just want to say this is a huge feat to begin with, and the only reason we're able to go as deep as we do is because all of those elements are pretty much perfect to begin with. I did find myself struggling with this one at first, although I struggled less to understand what was going on the more I watched it. There's a combination of things happening, and I'll overview them for now, but we'll get more specific moving forward. First off, this definitely comes off as a passion project because of how deeply each character is represented. For someone familiar with the characters, that's an instant plus, but it's almost the opposite for someone who doesn't know them well. Second, the instrumental, for me, a little underwhelming. It is extremely basic until Freddy's second verse begins, and that's about a whole minute and 40 seconds into the video. The first time I watched, especially, I didn't feel pulled in, and I felt like it was kind of unfinished. Of course, that goes away after a few watches, yada yada yada. But actually, the first time that I was watching, I actually paused the video and made sure my headphones were plugged in. Epic Rap Battles of History. Because I wasn't hearing anything. In fact, when I was going to review this and I watched it several times, I found myself checking to make sure that it wasn't paused in the beginning of the video because of how long it takes for that music to begin and how quiet it is when it does begin. Third, a lot of the lyrics are very conversational and question-answer based. Now this is because the instrumental is on the slower side, so unless they do it rapid fire, lines take longer to begin and end. It's either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's not that much room in the middle. There's an overall clunky feel to how some of the punchlines are very wordy. Look at the size of your body, how can I possibly think I'm in trouble? I can't tell the difference between your action figure and your stunt double. As opposed to the ones that are actually concise and to the point. I'll call you tomorrow morning if I need my toast butter. So if anyone were to have an issue watching this, I feel like one of those reasons is why. But as I went on and analyzed more, you'll see that there is much more to appreciate with this rap battle in particular, even though it really wasn't resonating with me at first. There is a ton of lore, visually and thematically. I've never been a huge fan of either of these characters, so if I were to understand everything at a surface level, it would mean that they didn't go deep enough. But it's clear after watching the battle and the behind the scenes, especially, that they went so intricately in depth with these portrayals against the interest of casual fans. That's enough to assure my faith in ERB hasn't lost its touch, because in my prime days of chiseling, you'll find that that was one of the things that I wish they did more of. Now, you don't need me to tell you what references they made. They made the behind the scenes video much more in depth, and there's also an ERB wiki page that I'll link in the description that notes all of the references to the source material. So that means that my job is done, right? No, it's just beginning. You're gonna get an analysis here that you won't get anywhere else as usual. And even though I'm not big on either of these characters, it won't stop me from making commentary on why certain lyrical structures or visuals either flop or work. Just don't expect me to reference A Nightmare on Elm Street every time Freddy yells out the B word. And by the way, this is gonna be a clean episode. Sorry. The video itself begins awkwardly for me. However, once it does pick up, you'll notice the instrumental pitch bends upwards into its eventual proper key, which is naturally extremely unpleasant but perfectly fitting to introduce a horror character like Freddy Krueger. The way the announcer draws out the word treats the word begin like a jump scare. It's clear the long intro is made to build suspense, but it got stale quick for me. I love how Freddy drags his finger across the bottom of the screen. It's certainly out-of-the-box meta thinking that makes them use the box of videos contained in for that self-aware aesthetic. Chiseler and patron Primeval says, sound design was done very well to distinguish Wolverine's claws from Freddy's finger knives in the beginning cards, and that's certainly true, and in fact it's a huge point of contention that's sure to be brought up later. The video has strong visual dynamic range right off the bat. Chiseler and patron Jeff chimed in with, I love that they're both complementary colors. The warm orange-red flames behind Freddy contrasts really nicely with the dark, muted, cool-colored background Wolverine had. So overall, the intro, it's a mixed bag for me. It succeeds in establishing the differences in our characters while also setting the tone, but I think it takes too long to set that tone, and postpones the rapping by a total of 21 seconds. The rapping starts with a twist on the nursery rhyme, 1, 2, buckle my shoe. It's again perfect in setting the tone for a slasher like Freddy. I do know why they elect to repeat the words instead of saying lock your door, because coming for you doesn't rhyme with door. Obviously, it's a clever way of avoiding a shoehorned rhyme and making that transition gradual instead. The television setting also gives us a chance to realize that we may not be working in reality right now. Welcome to prime time. Better stay awake like a meth head. Obvious insert catchphrase here. I think it works to begin the rap battle. We want to recognize that character immediately, and just usurping the use of that catchphrase seems like the right way to do that. Now this is our first good look at Freddy, which to me is a good thing because the glimpses we get before he actually starts to rap establish a true belief that this is really the character from the movie. It's like I said with Deadpool and Boba Fett, you can't get much more real than people behind the masks. This mask in particular is a little bit different. When it comes to the camera shooting point blank at this mask trying to lip sync, suspension of disbelief just has to kick in. Looking at clips of Freddy from the movies, I see why the rapper Wax would fit the mold perfectly. I just think this mask doesn't allow him to be as expressive. And in fact, I think what this battle is thirsty for the most is that flavor that Wax brings to everything that he does. His face is disguised, his voice is disguised, and the instrumental is not treated like a playground like his other raps are. For me, it hurts to say I feel like he's not in this battle at all. And I hate that because Wax is one of the few real rappers that I enjoy listening to. And if you're watching, hey man, how's it going? I know all the words to No Smoking in the House, and like the Zoog Zug Cypher was like the first rap I ever really made. I'm the giant, you're just Jack. Nothing but a has-been. Better stay awake like a meth head. And better stay awake is a great threat paralleled by Wolverine later, who says, don't sleep, that's how you got for me. This is a dueling dynamic where Freddy's really tempting Wolverine. It seems like both staying awake and falling asleep are equally easy to do. And that's pretty scary if that's all that stands between you and Freddy Krueger. A couple of times we see single lines that have two independent clauses wedged in, completely walled off from each other with no relation of rhyme scheme.
Welcome to prime time. Shit. Better stay awake like a meth head. Look at the size of your body. How could I possibly think I'm in trouble? I ain't got time for this. Saving the world. What qualities do you bring?
Now these lines are not necessarily bad because they do exist in the world of the rap battle. They never leave the context, which is good, but they do come off as a bit clunky to me. It's the result of the instrumental being just slow enough to permit these drawn-out lines that sound more like a conversation than rap. Now compare it to when Wolverine tries a much faster pace within the same amount of time.
So step into my cat now, see if you can hack that. Better hang on to your whack hat, cause your worst nightmare ain't you, Jack. Compared to the least of my Weapon X flashback.
I don't really prefer when long lines use these dividers, these walls, whether it's a period or a question mark or an exclamation, a rhetorical statement followed by the answer to oneself. That natural pause between them, it feels arrhythmic and lacks flow to me. You would have to add either more words to draw it out further or actually condense it and shorten it to double time. And then it becomes kind of like word soup. It's like there's too much room for one thought, but not enough room to flesh out two. A similar issue happens with the slasher/slasher line, which I actually think is really clever.
Under that mask, you're a singer/actor. Under my skin, I'm a slasher.
It's a moment where you have to decide, are you going to draw out this joke over the course of 2 bars, or can you cram it into 1? Can it be interesting enough to be spread so far, but then does it run the risk of the setup and the punchline being spread too thin? In this case, they cram it into 1 line, and I think that's the right call. I want you to learn how to create and test out an alternative line if you were to have dragged it out over 2 bars, and see which would be better. If not for choosing to run it in 1 line, the joke may have looked like this. Under the Dracula grin, you're simply a singer/actor, but under my actual skin, you'll find I'm a criminal slasher/slasher. You can't say slasher/slasher because you have to emphasize all of those words, which is why it kind of runs over into the next bar, giving him time to pause. So you can see how the alternative line separates the setup, singer/actor, and then moves over the punchline, slasher/slasher, into the next line. With this alternative that I made, I feel like there's too many words that separate them to make the comparison immediate, and the immediacy is what makes it funny. Now in this moment, even when a punchline's not great, it's an opportunity to implement a mood shift that makes us feel like it is. You're coming off of a 4-bar sequence that's meant to feel like you're just getting warmed up. And I wanted to hear a dramatic change in the instrumental right after this line to really push the momentum forward.
Under that mask, you're a singer/actor. Under my skin, I'm a slasher.
But it actually stays there instead and repeats the cycle. I'll be honest, without knowledge of the character, the frequent usage of that B word does seem a bit jarring at first. Obviously, when you learn something he says in the movie, duh, it absolutely makes sense. That's another example of how they sacrifice general audience consumption for the greater fidelity of referential material, which is something that I've wanted to see ERB do for a while, even if it alienates somebody like me in the matchups that I'm not familiar with.
I come from Wes Craven's twisted mind. You come from comic books the kids get when they're well behaved at Christmas time.
Freddy makes another valid comparison here. It's movies versus comics. Demented writer versus cartoon writer. They do a good job at demonstrating that instead of just saying it. This whole visual concept of, you come from a kid's Christmas gift. Now again, we run into this issue where we have to draw out that punchline because it takes a lot of wording to set up. You come from comic books that kids get when they're well behaved at Christmas time. I don't know, it feels like to me that there's a lot of components of that line that aren't homogenized, and I'm trying to find a way to make that sound more natural. It's like there's too many steps that it takes to reach that punchline. I mean, you could change it to rhyme a bit more. You're the kitten that kids be getting from comics under the Christmas tree. However, that loses some of the obviousness and the real visual punch in the face that the original has. I just think that it's the nature of these jokes that take a few steps to realize. And I guess the only reason I'm bringing this up in the first place, if I don't think it should be changed, is because I want you, the viewer, to understand that there are alternatives for things like this. If it just so happens that every single line you're writing turns out like this, then maybe you should take some of them and convert them into the alternatives. And you'll see that they do that here in this rap battle, where they have these lines that are more drawn out, conversational, and then they really get into the nitty-gritty with some nice flow, especially with Wolverine.
They want their hairstyle returned. And that wasn't even my main diss, it was just a sideburn.
Now this is where the battle really starts to pick up for me. You have this really nice mood shift with the instrumental paired with a clean setup and punchline that really strikes the core of what ERB is. You see, whenever you can take source material and repurpose it into the context of rap, that's the highest magnitude of uniqueness achieved in epic rap battles of history.
Nice glove, bub, but I'm real from bones to teeth.
When Wolverine begins, this cut back to a bare instrumental kind of works for me because he's bringing Freddy back down to earth a bit. He's like, not so fast there, partner, I got something to say about you too. And what a thing he says.
That claw's like a strap-on. There's a pussy underneath.
This is such an obvious but powerful point to bring up for Wolverine. Yeah, they both have claws, but only one person's are snit real. So that instant call out of imitation really grips you, and it's followed up by a great line provided the context of the moment, its setup, and the matchup in general. Freddy's claw is a strap-on, and then you recontextualize it to its more perverse meaning, giving the P word that they say now 3 unique meanings when also considering that Wolverine is an animal. He calls his opponent a feline, which draws that animalistic contrast.
Don't sleep? That's all you got for me? Could defeat your ass with a cup of tea.
Don't sleep? That's all I have to do. I can take a wake-up sip of tea and stop you before the fight even begins. See, that's brilliant out-of-the-box thinking for the circumstantial mechanics of each rapper's powers, which we also see later when Freddy whips out his magnet.
You got beat by a Nancy on Elm Street.
You got beat by a Nancy! Ha! Since Nancy is the name of the character and a pejorative for a weak, fragile person, that line writes itself literally. Now, after this 4 bars, we see a parallel from Freddy's verse, where we really have an opportunity to up the ante with the instrumental, but it doesn't, and we kind of just get this weak grunt instead. Both verses so far have that awkward 4th to 5th bar transition, in my opinion, and it's those moments where the rap feels like it's really not coming together, compared to when it really does feel like it's coming together. Even if there was just a big thump right in the middle to act like a factory reset on the next 4 bars. All right, we keep it going. All right, it would be fine, but I feel like the momentum just gets muddy, it kind of gets stale, it kind of falls off the cliff there.
The PTA turned your face into Deadpool's ball sack, wrapped in a Where's Waldo sweater. Jason can't talk and he rocks the mic better.
I love the references to Deadpool and Jason. I don't know why they didn't show Deadpool when they've already filmed with him. I don't know, I feel like he just fit right into the hand there. But Jason next to Wolverine at first looks like a kind of awkward frame with a lot of negative space in it until you realize that it's to first establish a height comparison for Wolverine. See, Epic Lloyd made a point to represent him very faithfully, and that short stature is first recognized, whether consciously or not, in this side-by-side shot.
So step into my cat now, see if you can hack that. Better hang on to your whack hat, cause your worst nightmare ain't you, Jack. Compared to the least of my Weapon X flashback.
This line does something important by inviting Freddy onto his own turf. Yeah, come and try to get into my catnap, into my dreams. I'll beat you there, because nothing that you can do to my dreams is worse than what I've endured on my own. Exactly paralleling the first verse, I do feel it coming back together here when the beat adds something new. And then Wolverine takes the opportunity to introduce the first thing that's really akin to a rap flow at this part of the battle. Even though I tend to not like these parts because of how basic they can be, it's the first time it really feels like a rap. And you saw in the behind the scenes video that they actually did go underwater in a tub to create the visuals here, but it's not really registering with me when I first watch it. I think if they just left it up a bit longer and actually showed some bubbles coming out of his mouth, it would really click for me. I just feel like I hate to see that moment go to waste, that they went so far to do that. And sure, it worked, but I had no idea he was underwater until the behind the scenes.
Cause your worst nightmare ain't you, Jack. Compared to the least of my Weapon X flashbacks. I'm the Adamantium champion X-Man. You'll only ever be half of Edward Scissorhands. So don't get me more pissed, chump. I'll take your whole franchise out with a fist bump.
A lot more bragging from Wolverine to balance after starting his verse with a lot of disses instead. I think that fist bump line is a really clever way to write visually with lyrics, thinking down to how each body part of the character functions.
Look at the size of your body. How can I possibly think I'm in trouble? I can't tell the difference between your action figure and your stunt double.
Here comes Freddy, an intense mood shift. Here is just what I'm looking for, paired with Freddy growing infinitely tall, again to demonstrate that size comparison. Freddy's second verse is hinged on Wolverine's worst fears, his height, the girl, magnets. Look at the size of your body. Okay, he is pretty small, I gotta admit. What's a Wolverine? You know, yeah, what is a Wolverine? Some kind of angry beaver? Oh! There's a lot of rhetorical questions or exclamations used to set up these punchlines, and I find that really works best in an environment where there is no instrumental. Something like a King of the Dot rap battle, where that silence that naturally follows a rhetorical question can actually speak volumes. Instead, rapping to music leaves no time for the simplicity in the statement to really marinate with us.
What's the matter? You look tired, eh? I'll be in your bed tonight. I'm like Gene Gray.
The sound design is really great on the Freddy fingers coming out, and it's just another really cool visual that takes influence from the world rules of the source material instead of simply recreating something. Now this is where the dream sequence really kicks in. As the creator, when you want to change the background, change the environment, you can't just flip a switch because that makes the viewer feel jarred. There has to be a creative transition so that the viewer doesn't feel interrupted in the world that you put them in. So notice how they use the moon to flash transition into a street light, which now places Wolverine in this new location. And then you have Freddy lifting up his face here.
As for me, I'm a chick magnet, so heavy men's influence is real attractive.
Not only acclimating us to more of this new scenery, but also giving us this great villainous sense of empowerment. It's also one of the few moments where the mask looks really believable. And again, here I really like using the world mechanics to construct a diss both lyrically and visually, with the chick magnet drawing Wolverine's body in. A heavy metal B-word would be a girl that likes that kind of music, but it's also a scaredy cat made of metal, like Wolverine. There is a lot of Dutch angles going on here, which is a fancy way of saying tilted camera angles meant to instill distress. We normally see things straight on, like a square, but when it gets tilted, it kind of tilts us. You know? I'm not gonna put that on a pillow. If you couldn't tell why Wolverine was being pulled in, you're reminded that he's attracting metal objects with both the lyrics and the extra visuals like the soda can and the wrench. The Justin Bieber line is really funny, because it's a joke for everybody. Kind of makes fun of something else whilst applying the burn on the Wolverine. I really like how they were going with the faster paced line here, given it's another one of those lines that requires a lot of setup room. They give us that quick burst, which is one of the first moments where I really feel like Freddy's rapping instead of just arguing and bullying. Minor nitpick, I would have adjusted the flow slightly to say, I was more intimidated by a tiny Canadian when I first saw Justin Bieber. Instead, they say, I was more intimidated by a tiny Canadian the first time I saw Justin Bieber. The first time I saw Justin Bieber. This yell into waking up, it's a great way to break off that dream sequence because that happens to us in real life and in movies when we wake up from nightmares, doesn't it? And then the beat kicks in with a new added synth layer. So yes, we've moved up a step in mood since the first part of the rap battle, which really helps drag you into this part. A nice parallelism with Wolvie's first verse comes back with a short bub joke and then another claw comparison. And then my favorite line in the rap battle hits.
That verse stung, bub, but I've already recovered. I'll call you tomorrow morning if I need my toast butter.
What an awesome way to mock that main difference we mentioned earlier, the real claws versus the strap-on. And again, a way that takes influence from the source material instead of just referencing it. They take the rules of the world and apply them to something new out of the learned context of both franchises. Your fingers are knives, butter my toast. Now I could see that being the actual line in a fan-made rap battle. And if it was in this one, I definitely would have complained about it, but see how they take it further. By really blending it with the sentence structure, it's almost like the diss sneaks up on you instead of forcing that fact in your face. My kind of line. Friends in the ERB Discord server noted that the Gandalf photo is the same one from when they killed off the heroin joke, and also that the actor who plays Gandalf is also the actor that plays Magneto.
You're a pedophile from the Midwest. At least R. Kelly could sing.
I love the R. Kelly line too. Where'd that come from? It uses modern pop culture and also the unique musical connections that ERB has to create a line that works so well in the context of a rap matchup.
See, I've got the wrong room if you're looking for fear. Only thing scares me is a freak with no beer.
Now the momentum really pushes forward here with these constant stabs in the instrumental that I so longed for earlier. Where weren't they? Coupled with the great storyboarding in this practical environment. You really have to do it right when you're doing practical, especially in a video that also contains the abstract. Patron and master chiseler Blake said it was genius to have most of the battle take place in a dream and that reality was actually filmed at an on-location place. And notice how when Wolvie gets up, you can see Freddy lurking in the background in every other shot. So we'll be still battling his demons, but he's ready to face them. That face tells me you've met your match. Quick wordplay that goes over your head, but very intricate. Met your match like a lighter. It's fine to leave this line as simple, throwaway, just sneak it in there. It was on the table the whole time. We couldn't really find a place for it. Let's put it in here. Really would have been hammered home if it was, for example, in the first verse, where the pace is a bit slower, and it can be followed up by a flickering light sound effect. They also recreated Freddy pressing through the wall pretty well, even if silly old me thought it looked more like a spiky ball from a cream machine. The logo goes crooked, breaks apart, and blurs to distinguish dreams from reality, and how they can sometimes overlap and confuse and bewilder us. And that's a wrap! So it's really a battle that at first ranked among my least favorites, that I did come to appreciate with the added knowledge. I hope that you had a similar experience too, because ERB is one of those unique things that exists not only to entertain, but also to culture us and those that are part in creating them. Stay tuned for a sneak peek of a new song on my upcoming EP with hoops and hip hop, and leave your suggestions below for the wacky writing prompts rap. I'm Mat4yo, and that's... How did I get here? No. You.
You are infinitesimal to an infinitesimal place value. An infinite is better at making intricate sentences when it's itching after going without food. An hour too long and can only say gotta go. The whole globe is a masquerade. School's out and you can't get a passing grade. I'm the king of the castle, so grab my grapes and start fanning your grade for a palace made.